Hello and welcome to The Reset, a mental health podcast without all the bollocks. I'm Sam Delaney. My guest this week is the most sought after personal trainer in the Hollywood movie industry, the man responsible for getting James Bond, Captain America and numerous other stars in shape and screen ready, Simon Waterson. I spoke to Simon about his background in the military, how he got involved in movies and the fitness industry, and the relationship between mental and physical health. And of course, I asked him who the next James Bond is going to be. We recorded this interview live in front of an audience at Olympic Studios in Barnes, London. This was just the latest Reset Live event, which I host a few times a year. If you'd like to come along and attend a future recording, why not upgrade to the Reset Extra? For just $5 a month, you get free access to these events, plus bonus pods, newsletters, and access to our community chat too. Just go to samdelaney.substack.com/subscribe. Anyway, I hope you enjoy listening to this chat with the really amazing Simon Waterson. Okay, everyone. Thanks for coming this evening. Pleasure to see you all here. Really grateful to have you all here. Thanks to the Olympic for being the venue. Thanks to Jordan and Ignite for being my partners in all of this, in promoting it. And thanks most of all to Simon Waterson, who's our special guest tonight. Let's hear it for Simon for coming along. This is Simon's book, which is out now, 10-Week Intelligent Fitness Challenge. Follow up to your previous book was Intelligent Fitness, and this is the actual challenge to enact some of the ideas. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to dig into that a bit more. I'm going to talk to Simon first just about his life, what brought him into his current career, his background in the military and so forth, and then a little bit about how he perceives the relationship between physical fitness and mental health. And then I think there's a lot of people who will have a lot of questions for you, Simon, so I'll put a decent amount of time aside for those.
No worries. Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming.
Pleasure.
Welcome to The Reset.
Thank you.
So Simon, you grew up in Hull, you were just telling me. What was your background? Were you a sort of a guy who was a big sports guy and fitness guy from childhood?
I think so, yeah. School time. Yeah, I was always tried to be in every team and, trying to win the cross country every year and all, so I think that was my I don't want to say it was an introduction because you're a kid, you like I've said before, you're training like a kid, so kicking balls, throwing balls, running around, the usual, the usual kind of stuff. But then I kind of realised from quite a young age that where I was living was not the most desirable place, and I think I was very conscious that I needed to get out of there. And at the age of very super young age, when you could join the military and you could be in at 15 and 9 months. Now I don't know if it's still the same. I don't know if it's still the same now, but 15 and 9 months. I can't see many people like that age, but it's that's a very, very young age to kind of make a conscious decision to go into the city centre, sit a series of exams, have a medical, and then get accepted, and then jump on a train all the way down to to Plymouth and start and get off a train at 15 and 9 months. And I look at it now and think I must have been but I don't know, something just instinctively told me that, I want to be fit and I want to see the world and I want to do it differently to the people, what I could see happening to other people. So, but I tell people that and they go, and everyone's got sons and daughters around that age, and they go, I would never let my son and daughter leave at that age. Oh my God, what was your mum and dad thinking? Yeah. But my with hindsight, my mum and dad told me as the train pulled off, my mum just literally and dad they were on their knees lying on the platform just
Really?
Yeah.
Begging you not to go?
They were in absolute disarray.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I could barely tie my own shoelaces, and then when you get on the train and your mum's giving you a packed lunch and I'm going thinking, oh God, I'm still at school.
Yeah, you're a kid.
Yeah. I mean, and then you get there. I've
got a 15-year-old.
Yeah, and it's inconceivable.
It's a bit of a joke.
Yeah, it's inconceivable.
I mean, she can't butter her own toast.
That's what I mean. And then doing the military thing. So I went down there, did all that, and And it is, and I always remember seeing a headline in the Sun when I was in the military. This is a brutal one, really. Old enough, and it was a guy similar age. I was about 17 then. Like, not old enough to buy a pint of lager, but old enough to kill. And you're like, that's a real strong statement. That I wouldn't be able to walk into a pub and order a pint, but I can be sent to the battlefield.
Yeah.
It's a lot of that age, and a lot of, obviously, you know, we all know there's a ranking system, and you're very, very well looked after. And but again, it was it's interesting. I don't know now. It's a different. Then it was perceived. Join the military, see the world.
Yeah.
You know, get a trade, kind of like, you know, get paid and all, and to see the world. Now it's a little bit of a different kind of like field with what's going on in the world. So.
Yeah, and then of course as well with, like, for instance, Northern Ireland, there was like a very real chance that you're going to see active service quite quickly.
And that was my next, before I left, that was my next draft. And I saw that draft paper, and it was I was with a squadron called 845. There were helicopters, and they were the army were pulling out of Northern Ireland, and the Navy Sea Kings were going in to replace them, and that's who I was with.
Right.
And that was my next kind of like big port of call. But I'd done Bosnia. I just did as much sport as possible to kind of like get out of not going to work. It's like, I'd do anything. So, like, you know, anybody want to do the boxing Navy novices? Yeah. Like, you put your hand up, knocked out in the first round. But it was great. I was 3 weeks in Portsmouth. But anyone got, you know, like rugby. Yeah, it's a tour of Gibraltar. Yeah, of course I'll do it. Yeah.
So you found ways of like
always,
ducking too much and dodging bullets.
Yes.
And
always. And then I did something what's called at Earls Court, the Royal Tournament, called the Field Gun Crew.
Yeah.
Which was really, really tough, and I enjoyed it there. And that was my introduction, I think, to my first time into London.
Right.
So Earls Court was my first port of call.
Yeah.
And that's where I stayed there for kind of like 3 or 4 weeks for the Royal Tournament, which was great. And that was when I was starting thinking I'd like to be more in London, I think.
Right. And so, what do you think from a mental health point of view? The military. I mean, obviously, I guess it does you a lot of good at a young age, but is there also, you know, is there a shock that damages you at all? You know, when you first get plunged into that at such an early age, the sort of rigorous regime that you have to follow?
I think that what I kind of think is that I was so young that I didn't have any opinions. The older you do the military, the more opinionated you become, and the more you question things. But at the age of like 15 and 9 months, or, you know, nearly 16, you don't really you're told what to do, and you just do it. You just react because you're a little bit scared.
Right.
And you don't have to rationalise or reason with anything. It's like, you know, like run up the side of that mountain. It's like and you just do it, and you get to the bottom of this here. Now go back up to the top of the mountain, and you just do it. But a lot of the older people who I was with, who were in the mid to kind of like 20s, they would say, "But why?" And then the answer is, "It's not for you to question; it's for you to do." And they were the people that they got rid of.
Right.
So from a young age, it was good for me to especially like you say, like mentally, I didn't really have an opinion. I didn't know anything different, so I just did what they told me to do. And you get through.
And when you say that was motivated a little bit by fear, what was it like having that fear? Was that something you just got used to?
Yeah, the fear of failure, I think, is the thing, and the fear of me keeping up with all the other people that were a lot older than me. And I think at a young age that was my fear, is kind of fear of failure. And, you know, because it is literally kind of like, you know, there's a sheet every single week of the people that are just like, you can get back on the coach, thank you very much, get back on the coach, thank you very much. And the fear of that is just like, that's not going to happen to me. And with my name being W and everything's alphabetical order, always last. Right. And so you're just like this, like, you know, it's getting a field gun crew, you know, they start off with 180 people, and there's eliminations, and they call out kind of like 60 names. And you go, and finally, and then it's like, and Waterson. And you're just like, like what?
Yeah.
So,
and you say you toured Bosnia.
Yeah.
And did you see quite a lot of action when you were doing this stuff?
Lots of action there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That was again, mentally, very, very difficult because, you're comparing as a military person that, when you've seen a house that's destroyed and, someone like your grandma is sat there looking through the rubble for photographs and stuff, and it's just, that's really, really hard and it's tough. And you go through a process after you've been through that. You go through a therapy process after it to make sure that you're in a good place, because you see a lot of things that you shouldn't really be seeing at that age, and you're in a lot of situations what you shouldn't be in at that kind of age. But I think again, like as far as like mental health goes, I really think it's helped me now understand lots of different other elements, how the world kind of like works and how grateful we should be, or how humble we should be, or all the things that come along with keeping as sane as possible.
So you say that you go through therapy afterwards. Was that something that the military provided for you?
Yes.
Oh, because okay, so they're conscious of the fact that young people are coming back.
Completely,
and is PTSD something that you feel that you have suffered from? Yeah,
you don't realise that you are suffering from it until you're walking down the street and someone drops a dustbin lid on the floor and you're like, you're on the pavement with your hands on your head. You go, oh yeah, I'm not there anymore. Yeah. And that's
how long does that last? Is that still something that can be triggered to this day, or?
But you take all the positives like from that. So from being able to sleep anywhere under any kind of noise is fine now,
right.
Because you've got everything going off like around you, and it's fascinating. I mean, as a conflict, we've all seen on the news different conflicts, whether it's Afghanistan or Sierra Leone or Northern Ireland. Everything that happens in the world. Ukraine. You understand. I understand what's going on a little bit more, but it was a very, very bizarre. We used to stand there, and I remember all the coaches used to come, just like double-decker buses, and all the kind of I was in Split. And so all the Croatians, they'd just go off to war. It was like 9 to 5. So they all had their lunch boxes and a weapon. They sit on the coach. They go off to war. They do their thing during the day. And then we used to watch them all kind of come back. Most of them.
Right.
And that's where you're looking at going, that's half empty. That went full. And that's so but I just found that very, very bizarre that it was a 9 to 5 job. And they went off to the front line and then came back for dinner.
And that, I suppose, is what gives you that perspective that you say is a positive now. So you've seen people live in those environments with those lives. Yeah,
I think so. And it allows you to, the military is great because it's all about stripping somebody down. And that's the biggest thing that they do. Whether that's demeaning you, it's stripping you down. And it's a positive thing that they do that, so that you think and you react how they want you to. Because that's how it should be, that you need to react, and you've got a kind of like a job to do, and that's kind of like I see that as a huge kind of like positive.
But you need a personality type for that, don't you? I mean, you obviously you had naturally a personality type that could respond that well, and like you say, some people didn't make it because not everyone's going to respond and see that positively.
No, and like all of us, we question, on a daily basis, we question everything. That's what we do, But it's when you're that young, you don't question anything. You still, the training staff become basically your parents, and you look to them for guidance, and and it comes with all the frills as well. These are all the negatives, but there's a lot of massive, funny positives.
Yeah.
That I kind of I had in the military. I missed one of the biggest. I was in Malta and I was on a night out, and I came back and I missed the biggest aircraft carrier that the UK has got, and I could just see the back of it going out to sea, and I was still in all my clubbing gear, and I was like. And then I knocked on this. There was a limousine or something like that outside. That's my ship. I've just missed it. and it was the ambassador. The ambassador like tapped his chauffeur, and he came along, and his tugboat came along, and so I jumped on this tugboat, and still I was covered in glitter and and it's like, and that's a
so the ambassadors gave you a lift.
No, the military's going off. They're going off. There was jets taking off. There was helicopters in the air, and they were going off back to kind of Bosnia, up and down the Adriatic. And I was chasing after it with a tug. And it's like, I'm going like, Royal, could you please slow down, please? I have one young sailor on board. I was like, they're gonna kill me. And then you get, and that's my first kind of like little bit of, and the positive spin on it is that 2,000 people on the deck kind of clapping, going, "You're outside!" Yeah, and like, going, "You have had it." And you're like, but it's a funny experience. Like you kind of like get there, and I got a big fine, and I got kind of like put into the captain's office, and it's just like, well, it's like being in a court, and there's a character reference there. Your officer gives you a character reference, and I got given a big punishment, and but then they close the door, and the captain like comes, just they're like, "Oh, come here," and he puts his hand on his shoulder, and he's like, 25 years in the Royal Navy, no one's ever missed one of my ships. I hope she was worth it. And so there's always, always a little bit. There's a serious side, but it's then backed up with a little bit of banter just to bring you down a little bit, because you can't just be punished all the time.
No, there's a camaraderie.
Camaraderie, big time. So that was my kind of like, and I told my parents that they get a newsletter home when you're in Bosnia, and they and I was on the front page of the Maltese Times. One red-faced sailor left. And it's like, I don't know how they got that photograph or whatever. And but a newsletter goes home, and your parents get it, so you know exactly what you're doing. And they would say, and I remember getting home, and I'd done the Maltese Time, and I'd put it in my overalls pocket, and like left it in there. And they said, "Oh, who was that absolute idiot that missed the button?" I don't know, Dad. What an absolute... And then obviously my mum goes to do my washing. And then it was you. Yeah. So, all the military stories. But like you say, like getting back to like the mental side of things, they do look after you in a big way. And then there's the transition from the military into, what I believe that I'm all right at now.
So how did that come about? When did you make the decision to leave?
Yeah, I'd just done everything. I'd just done everything I need. I'd done war. I'd done kind of like sport. I'd seen most of the world. I'd kind of done all these like really amazing kind of like all these amazing things, and I just thought it's time for a change of what I would do. I was already super sporty. I was really getting into my fitness. So I'd done field gun, and I was like boxing, and I was kind of like doing circuits every day. Personal trainers didn't exist then. There was no personal trainers at all.
Right.
When I went back to college, and I started off doing a physio course, and then I thought, I'm into more of the fitness side of things and the nutritional stuff. So I kind of like, and then I did, and I did like, it was called then, it wasn't called like mental health, it was called lifestyle management.
Right.
So I did a course in like lifestyle management and how to look at people's lifestyles and whether, and then it was like, if someone maybe drinks too much, smokes too much, or eats too much, and it was quite basic. It was very, very basic. And so I did that, and then I came to London, and that transition, and it is one of them with a bike and a pager. It's
really?
Like, yeah, and a pager.
What era was this? What year was this?
96?
Right.
No, a bit later, maybe 97. Yeah, something like that.
And so you just came just on your own to set up.
Yeah,
you had this idea. I'm going to be a fitness coach.
Yeah, well, I knew that. I'd read an article, and the person that it was about Matt Roberts.
Right.
And Matt Roberts was a really famous trainer. He was, and it was basically, I was reading the Evening Standard, and it said the most expensive trainer in London, and and he was about 20 quid, and I was like, oh, that sounds amazing. And I kind of like used Hyde Park and all these areas now.
And what, you just started advertising yourself? How did you get started?
Leaflets through doors.
Right.
Just leaflets through doors.
What, in the poshest areas?
Yeah, in the poshest areas.
Right.
Yeah. So Chelsea, Mayfair, Richmond, kind of, and you just do that, the whole kind of a bit of a cliche really, but and I just did that. And I thought, you know, and then I was thinking, what else would be a real? Oh, I'm going to go and get my hair cut. So I saved up to get my hair cut in the most expensive place, because I'm thinking they're going to have all the people that I want. So I used to go and get my hair cut, and I said to the hairdresser, you can recommend me to all these. So a very young age of kind of like trying to get out there.
Rich people.
Yes.
Image conscious, appearance conscious, very smart marketing instincts you had.
That was it, yeah.
You must I don't suppose they taught you that in the army. You must have just had an instinct for marketing and selling yourself.
No.
And so how did that grow into you working for the sort of clients, the famous clients that you're known to work with now then? How did you get into the movie business?
I wrote, so I got into that kind of circuit, and I wrote a piece for, I think it was Men's Health or something like that. I think it was Men's Health, and somebody kind of like read it in a particular building, and that building contained the production company for James Bond, and so they'd read it as well, and they rang me and asked if I'd go for an interview. And I didn't know what it was. I just left the military. So I was still, uniforms and all that kind of, I just left the military. So and I went to Pinewood, and I sat in the cafe, which I actually sat in the same cafe in the same seat that I did this morning, actually, and had a coffee with Pete. And a little golf cart came and picked me up and took me to F Block, and they said, so he's an actor and he needs help. Military background is great because you'll have like structure and blah 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 blah. And they just knocked on the door, and they opened the door, and Pierce was sat there in full Bond,
dressed as James Bond.
The whole lot though, not just the suit.
Right.
He was in
wetsuit as well.
No, he was in full Bond regalia. So he was actually in his Navy uniform. It was that day.
Right, because he was okay.
Yeah. And I sat down and we had a chat a bit like this, and he was kind of like, do you want? And his son actually was laying on the couch playing GoldenEye, something like that. Yeah, true story. And then and he said, are you up for doing this, Simon? Tennis and mountain biking and staying with me. We're going on locations. We're going to Spain and we're going to Austria. And then how do you feel about that? I'm like, yeah. That sounds great to me. And he's like, how old are you, by the way? I said, I'm like 27.
Yeah.
He's like, I wasn't. I was 23. I'm like, I need to give myself a bit of credibility.
Yeah,
no one ever goes up in age.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you're like, no, try to be as young as possible.
Yeah.
I'll give myself more credibility. I can.
And so that was it. So the movie studio signed you up to work full time with him throughout the movie. The
worst deal ever, because I knew nothing about money or whatever.
Right.
I'd earned absolute pittance, and the person sat behind the desk. And they said, well, how much would you like to earn? And I said, well, I'd like to earn this amount of money. And they were like, well, we can't possibly pay you that. It's far too much. And I'm like, well, I can do it for a little bit less. And they're like, but I made a cardinal decision, a really bad decision, is that person was thinking that I was asking for that amount of money a week. I wasn't. I was paid monthly. I was asking for that amount of money a month. But then she twigged. And then she twigged and went, no, it's fine, we can pay you that. but she nearly paid me that weekly.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd have been so like, but no.
Shit.
And I know that, and we talk about, I see her now and again.
Oh, she's still there.
Yeah, but she gives me great jobs now, and she always says, oh, I'm really sorry in your young days that I really ripped you off. I'm like, yeah, you did.
Yeah, well, it set a precedent that you've had to break, hopefully, along the way. So what was that first experience like? Were you learning to work, with someone who's got a busy filming schedule, and you're trying to train him during that schedule while they're actually shooting a movie,
but not too kind of like different to being in the military. It's just structure, and everybody has a particular job. Everyone has to do the job. You've got to be at a particular time. You've got to kind of like do all these particular things within it. So I'd been doing it anyway for 7 years. I knew off by heart. One person's missing. That wheel doesn't quite turn. So so it's all about kind of like the structure. And so subliminally, I'm thinking, this works for me. The film business is exactly the same as the military.
Right.
Exactly the same. So that's why I fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, this is great. Yeah.
And that just... And was that Pierce Brosnan's last Bond movie?
No, he did another one after that. So I did two with him. I looked after, I think it was Denise Richards and just really, Robert Carlyle and Pierce on the first one, and the next one looked after like Halle Berry and Pierce. And then I had a long period kind of like off. I was doing different other movies. I went off with Jake Gyllenhaal, and then all different. And
so that basically got your foot in the door to the beyond Bond, just in the movie industry. And is that just word of mouth, basically?
It is a word of mouth, but the thing is, it's I always think that you can create your own little bit of luck, but you've still got to perform. There's no kind of like creating your luck and then you don't do very well, and you create a bit more luck. There's none of that in the film business. You create a little bit of luck, you get your foot in the door, you perform, and then they ask you back.
So what does performance look like then? Is that literally what the clients end up looking like?
Yeah.
Or is it other factors?
All the factors. I mean, performance is kind of like the word that you can attribute to everything in life, whether it's family, whether it's business, if you're performing well, then, you kind of like, you can attribute that to absolutely every aspect. And the way it looks like in the film business, performance-wise, is that, the actor is having to kind of like do his performance acting, and it's my job to alleviate all the other little things out of it. He doesn't have to think about his nutrition. He ain't got to think about his mental health. He hasn't got to think about his kind of like his fitness. He hasn't got to think about recovery. He hasn't got to think about anything like that, because he trusts me that I've got it, and this is the path that we're kind of like taking. And normally I'm pretty good with, the thing is, what the military allows, give the brain, the way that my brain kind of works, I can assess things really, really quickly. I know how to, micromanage things and assess things really, really well. And I always have different things going on in my head. I'm very much like, there's always an alternative, because that's the military. That teaches you that, like an exit plan on everything. But it's the same in the film business. You've got to have a 10-minute plan, a 30-minute plan, a 45-minute plan, a 60-minute plan. Oh my God, they've got half a day off, a half-a-day plan. So you've always planning. But it's like I'm always thinking 4 or 5 shots ahead.
Well, what's interesting to me is, right, you've got this military mindset that you're describing really well, and you love structure, order, and all the rest of it, right? Actors are artistic people. Yeah. Artistic minds are very different to that.
Completely.
They're all over the place. They don't operate in straight lines.
No.
Also, actors' lifestyles before they become James Bond or a Marvel hero are very often not about like what your life was like when you were 16. You're already getting up at God knows what hour in the morning, making your bed and going out on a run. These guys were at drama school, getting pissed every night and sleeping in till midday, right? So they're coming from a very different place. So how do you manage that?
I think,
and how do you and to what degree do you have to manage and shift their mental health or their mental perspective on things? I
think that's where they that's where, look, if you're getting the type of movies that I work on, you're already kind of nearly you're coming towards the top of your game. There's very unfortunately, it's not elitism, but there is a, I'm not training number 56 on who's playing the guy at the bus stop reading the newspaper. He's not getting kind of like PT 6 times a week. But there's a lot of them kind of like but it's all as well with it. The way that I look at it, it's structure and it's relevance. So the process of what happens is that I get a script. I get the script probably, I'm probably one of the first people on a project. So a film, they're going to have, there'll be a script, the producer, there maybe be a director. But my process takes such a long time. It can take 6 or 8 or a year. So I have to be on very, very early. Right. So they've thought about it. They said this person needs to be able to perform like this. So we're getting back to like the performance kind of like word. Now, I split the script up into 2 kind of like different things: aesthetic and athletic. Right. So I know the way that they have to look, but also as well I know how the way that they've got to perform. There's no point in looking great if you've got no performance in you, and there's no point in kind of having a performance if it doesn't look real. You can't have Thor picking up, like a bit skinny, picking up that big hammer, because everyone goes, you can't pick that up. And so so I have to get it both right from kind of like both both kind of like aspects of the aesthetic and the athletic. And then so I do all that. I break all kind of like the script up, and then I kind of like break it into kind of, this is nutrition, this is recovery, this is training, and these are the stunts that you're going to be asked to be able to do.
Right.
Now, like someone like Daniel, like on the first one, Casino Royale, they trust you 100%.
Right.
That I've got to take you, put you in the gym, create all these movement patterns. Then you're going to go to the stunt room. You're going to do loads of choreography. Then you're going to go to the stage, and you're probably going to do it about 6 to 8 times, over and over and over again. So it's the fitness, it's the movement, it's absolutely everything.
Because ideally they would want him to do as many of his own stunts as possible.
Yeah, and actors always want to do all their own stunts because that's the enjoyable part.
Right.
That's, the last thing you want to, you're like, oh well, I've said this, and then I'm just going to jump off a milk crate the last kind of like 6 inches, but the stuntman's coming out of that window kind of like, yay! It's like, no, that's it.
Yeah.
That's that.
I remember one of the Daniel Craig movies. There's a huge like sort of chase scene right at the beginning that's basically parkour, like,
yes,
and that is a huge. That is like a massive. That's one of the most like prolonged sort of stunt scenes I can remember in a Bond movie, and it looks very authentic. I mean, that must have been a particular challenge.
Yeah, it was. I broke all that kind of like down. There's the kind of like, and you start to know it off by heart. It's kind of like, here, take your finger off your ear, take your finger off your ear, and then it kind of starts, and you kind of go and sprint down the wall, over the wall, okay, over the rooftop, through the car, and I'm creating all this in the gym.
Right.
So, and that's why, it's like I'm a PT, but it's a very different world that I'm in. So I kind of I know the script off by heart, and I know the movement patterns that I've got to create. And I know you've got to be able to sprint, get off the ground, and then he's over a fence. So he kind of go. So there's over a fence, which was 6 feet, which I had in the gym, so he could grab hold of it, then go over, land on the sand, and then it's kind of, the treadmill is like that, because then he's going up a crane, as you saw him on that white crane, like getting to the top of that, and then it's all balanced on the top. So it's like at school, it's all them like really long benches that we used to hate, and you have it like with the thick side, and then you turn it the other way around, and it's like that thing. Yeah. So it's all. So I created it kind of like that, the sprinting and the moving around and those movement patterns. But the one thing that I can't take into consideration is that he was just absolutely shitting himself, because you're a pie.
Yeah.
It's like, I forgot about that. So adrenaline, and then you have to think about what's happening with the body. How are those adrenals doing? Don't burn out your adrenals. Right, I'll compensate that. We're going to use kind of like electrolytes so you don't burn out your adrenals. How's your kind of like your muscle kind of, okay, I'm going to need to use the magnesium. I'm going to do magnesium, potassium, calcium, just to make sure that your muscles are just not going to cramp and kind of like you get. So you're thinking internally, externally, and also athletically. It can get a little bit kind of like complicated, and that's why a lot of people they do like a couple of bits with a couple of actors, and then they go, it didn't kind of work, because they've been too one-dimensional. They've just made them look great, and actually it's not about that. It's about performance and the mental side of things as well. The mentality, because they're just like lines. They've got like with any actor, they've got to stand on a mark. Remember kind of like pages and pages and pages of dialogue. So they've got to have the mental capacity. And when you kind of like, with a trainer, what normal trainers, they come into this business and they starve them of carbohydrate, and the actor stood there going, oh God, the line, what's that line? Can the line please? And they're like, and the director's going, I can't remember your lines. Oh, I've got no carbs in me. Like the trainers put me on 0 carbs. I'm on a keto diet. Yeah. And you can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't. So you have to understand the physiology of what's happening in the body.
And how do you manage them through the stress? Like you're talking about that, like the schedules, I assume, are ever changing. There's very irregular hours. There's the stress of being a superstar, which I guess is just a daily stress at any time when you're working with very big superstars. It's a stressful experience. And there is learning lines and all the rest of it. How do you manage? Your clients must hit brick walls or stress where they're just like, I'm not doing this, I can't handle it. How do you get people through those sorts of moments?
It's like there's a serious side of things, and then I have different spaces with different gyms. The gym door kind of like closes, it's locked, And it's like, this is your safe space now. You know, what we kind of like got to do. You alleviate that and you bring it back into normal life. Talk about normal life. It's a bit about, football or kind of like, what else is on at the movies. So you're providing escapism, and that is a really kind of good decompressant. So you're providing escapism from the film. The worst thing you want to do is talk about the day that you've just had. It's about kind of like me telling funny little kind of like anecdotes and stories and kind of like, and reading the room. It's about, like I said before, the military allows you to read the room really very, very, very quickly and know what's going on, whether it's mental fatigue, because mental fatigue is you need to know the difference between physical fatigue and mental fatigue. But mental fatigue is absolutely exhausting, and that comes from obviously using brain. I've done loads of things like with so who was hard, who was mentally, he was physically fit all the time, Ray Fiennes, but mentally, I did like Hamlet with him, and I did other things where he was on stage, but mentally they're just exhausted. Right. So you have to think for them. You're physically still capable, so let's work out, let's do this, let's stretch, let's recover, but I don't need to be asking you many questions. I don't need to be kind of like engaged in kind of like complex kind of like, what's happening on, I don't know, the FT or the Guardian or Times, like what's the front page, it's about creating that escapism. So you're giving them some, you're challenging people with the mental health side of things. You're just trying to alleviate that through escapism.
Yeah.
And that's what I try.
So there's a lot of therapy in your. I've always thought that. Which I said it to Jordan, my trainer. It's like there's a lot of therapy that you just have to sort of learn as you go along. You have to learn about human nature, don't you?
No, completely. And that's why. But you haven't got long to do it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
So it's knowing when to. I learn people's idiosyncrasies like really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Of when they're hungry, when they're tired, when they're kind of like, when they don't really feel like it, or when they, when you need to leave the room, when when a phone call, someone else comes in. You learn people's idiosyncrasies really, really quick, and their tics are kind of they're hungry or and you just know straight away.
Yeah.
That's why working with Daniel for 16 years, I know straight away when he's kind of like going, it's got to be time for a shake or a snack and soon. You can just see and that's when you have to be there.
You're ready.
Yeah, you're ready
with the Bond snacks.
Ready with the Bond snacks. Yeah, and that's it.
So listen, I'm going to pass this up. I'm sure lots of people got loads of questions. I wanted to just ask you lastly about just the theme of like the line between being super committed to improvement in your fitness and lifestyle and addictive tendencies.
Yeah,
I've always thought that I've always thought there's a very fine line. And do you think that people in your industry are like very often sort of almost on the edge of that, and that's how you harness it in a positive way?
Yeah, I think so. But it's really hard with the addiction stuff. It's like swapping a bad addiction for a good addiction. But is fitness a good addiction when it turns into an obsession? So it's really, like you say, there's a really, really fine kind of like balance. And I think you've always just got to listen. You've got to listen to yourself a lot, and use friends, family, and whatever to see what they're kind of doing to find that kind of like balance. But no, you're right though, and it's hard to kind of like I don't know, coach people of because for a long time we had like this different directors, I suppose, like in the 90s and 2000s, an actress looked possibly aesthetically a certain way, but and they a lot of people were getting jobs from the way that they looked, instead of like, well, the best actor in the room is actually that person who maybe isn't aesthetically how you perceive them, but is so much more talented. But why have you got this person who's like, so, but it's a really, and that's my job, is to provide complete balance, especially the mental side of things. But I think, like we just talked about before, the alleviation through escapism for me is the way that I deal with that, and just give them a sounding board and of kind of like, it's all about the performance, and provide like different kind of things, like kind of like aesthetic is a byproduct of great performance. If you're performing well mentally, physically, everything else will take care of itself. Don't worry about all that kind of stuff. just concentrate on, giving yourself like 100% of your best kind of like performance. But the mental side of things is tough.
Have you ever do you have to keep an eye on that in yourself?
Yeah.
And you're like, do you have obsessive tendencies? Are you a perfectionist? Are these things you need to manage?
Yeah, I am, and I get tired like everyone else, and I have to differentiate between mental health and mental fatigue. They're two different, they're kind of like two different things, two different elements. Am I fatigued because I've used my brain a bit too much all day, and I've given everyone else all my energy and all my mental kind of like capacity, and that's it. Because you get kind of you get some people who are really, really super demanding, and they're codependent, and they suck every little last bit of mental out of you, and and
Daniel
physical.
Craig, right?
Not Daniel. No, he's the one that isn't. He doesn't. He's one of the only. Well, no, there's a lot of them, but some of them really. I mean, actors that I've worked with, really high profile, megastar actors. Literally, they don't want you. You stay there, so I just need you to be there for my support. You stay there,
right.
Just be there for my kind of support. Can you be my eye line, please? So I just because it makes them feel safe, a familiar face, and it's like, but I'm just absolutely exhausted. And then I have to go and try and recharge and reboot myself.
What do you do when you notice these things happening to you?
I just take myself out of the situation, and I'll go and put my legs in the air and meditate and listen to things, or I'll go and read a book or just something like that. At the minute, I kind of like I'm doing grounding and getting the energy from the things that people got a bit used to think, it's a bit woo woo. Well, actually, we're now seeing all the things with, especially kind of like the I've just done lots of things, ice bathing, all that kind of like stuff. All the ice stuff is just phenomenal. The research that's coming out on that, grounding the earth. I watched a thing the other day of a guy that put electrode in the earth, and he had his feet on his feet kind of like on his shoes. He put it, there was nothing, and then kind of like he put like the electrode in the earth. And like went up to kind of like I think like 5 hertz or something like that. The energy that's coming through, and then you find out that going through the soles of your feet and re-energizing yourself in that, and you go, no, that's not right. That can't be true. Like that's woo woo.
Yeah.
But yeah, ice bathing, meditation, and that for me, as a quick fix and a quick reset, and then kind of like lots of like electrolytes. I'm thinking, I'm a new man. And that is literally, and that's what, 5-6 minutes?
Wow.
2 minutes of that, 2 minutes of that, 2 minutes of that. Like kind of like great.
Yeah.
So it's about knowing how to, treat yourself kind of like, properly and be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a lot of, vultures of kind of like
energy vultures.
Oh.
Yeah, it sounds like you become like they think you're a nanny. Almost like full-time care. Listen, fascinating stuff. Thank you so much. And I've probably got a couple more questions myself, but for now, let's throw it open to everyone here. Yes, sir.
I was really interested in what you had to say, and I'm really delighted that you're using your talents to fine-tune a fantastic form of entertainment. So I enjoy the James Bond film. It also sort of scared me really about thinking about the way we fine-tune young men to go and kill other people. And is that really something that we should be doing? Isn't there another way? And you talked about questioning. I wondered if you question the business of sending people to war and whether there couldn't be a better way.
Well, yeah. I wish there was a better way, but and the reason that's a good example for myself is that was I capable of making those decisions at the age of like 15 and 9 months? And I probably wasn't. Now I don't know because I haven't researched it, but I don't know whether the age of the military is a little bit older, and maybe the age now of where they're actually they've gone through training and they're a little bit older, like kind of like going to actually a conflict. But in answer to your question as well, is that you're sent into an area of conflict, but also as well you can be under like the United Nations, and you're there. And like I was saying, you're there in different capacities. And I was, a lot of the time I was there on humanitarian reasons. So you are there for medical reasons. You are there for blankets. You are there for giving kids that have lost their parents sweets. lollipops and a hug. You're there for grandma that's on there saying, come with me, I'm going to give you shelter. So the reward from that, not necessarily being in kind of like direct conflict, pointing your weapon at someone, trying to kind of like protect yourself, you are getting the humanitarian things back, which I believe has given me, the heart that I've got and the mental capacity that I've got from all the things that I took out of that. So the war thing is the big negative, but whilst you're in that situation, the humanitarian element of it gives you a really appreciative, humble, and a good heart. So if the kids of today, or like actually went into that situation, I think they would get a lot more out of it than kind of like this all day. They would get, I'm going to help this person that looks like my granny, and I'm going to get her some food, I'm going to get her a blanket, and I'm going to take her to the place that she's going to feel safe. I think that's, I think that's a positive spin on it.
Yes. Great.
Great talk, thank you very much. Absolutely love the story about how you went from Hull to this at 15 years.
I know, it's like only fools and horses, like from
Hull and back.
People from where to where. Is that the from Peckham to Hull? Is it something like that? I can't remember. Yeah, I'm sure my age.
I could ask you lots and lots of questions, I'm sure, but the one that you finished, the subject you finished up on, the earth spike and meditation. I'm intrigued. Do you have any simple tips of how one can increase one's resilience to mental fatigue?
I suppose so. Yeah, those elements that I kind of like talked about. It's so simplistic. I mean, I've just started to kind of put together this like protocol of like real simplistic things like hydrate before you caffeinate. The body in the morning produces its own espresso system. So with cortisol and all the other hormones that's happening, it gets you out of bed, it knows what it's doing. Don't give yourself an espresso kind of like straight away. Even though every morning I'm meeting Pete has a double espresso and I'm like, can you just have a glass of water? It's something like that. But so that's the first thing that I kind of like think, especially with the kind of especially with like the mental side of things. And then also as well, I like to kind of like think about none of the sugar spikes and caffeine spikes. I try and take those out. Helps my kind of like mental kind of like state. I supplement with magnesium. I kind of like to do the cold shower. Now I finish like on a 3-minute every time. Amazing. The grounding. So I do like the grounding and re-energize kind of like that. And then I just find an app and I just do like 10-minute kind of like meditation. And at the minute, that's just helped kind of everything. Now I know, like with everything, we like with exercise, you need to change it up. And the brain is like anything. It's a muscle that needs, it's about adaptation. And, the body, if you do the same thing all the time, it adapts and it makes it easier. And that's kind of like the thing that I think is important, that the adaptation. So I'm doing that at the minute, but I know it might change, but it might be just increasing into the ice maybe for like 4 minutes, and then maybe the grounding's a little bit longer, my meditation's a bit longer, and I find out. But it's just really, I think simplistic is the easiest thing, because if it's complicated, like mentally, you're compounding, thinking about what you're doing, thinking about what you're doing. So just always really kind of like simplistic. And these bursts now, these kind of like these really interesting, these kind of quick bursts of exercise, we only get adaptation and we only get reaction through shock. And so we have to kind of like, these bursts of exercise are more beneficial than the actual long, sustained 60, 90-minute workouts, unless it's specific and you want to run a marathon. But like these 10 minutes and these 5-minute bursts of exercise are much more beneficial than anything else, because it means that we're not burning systems out, our adrenals or stuff like that. So it's all about compacting things and making things simplistic, fast, and getting a little bit of adaptation. Personally, and and for you to try would be kind of like great. And then you just get into the more specialist and not scientific, the physiology of it. It's like then I read a lot and take a lot of other people, like magnesium thyrate is now the only magnesium that can penetrate the brain's blood barrier wall, which allows you to kind of like sleep. So it's a particular thing. we've all been taking magnesium, great for kind of like for you know the body's kind of like muscular structure, but for the brain it can't penetrate the blood barrier wall, and so you need to take a particular so, and it gets really sciencey. But that's what I'm always trying to figure out, the most efficient kind of like ways of kind of like getting the best results. And we're all human. We're just looking for ease on everything. Oh, that's easy. Yeah, that's easy. But the best results. We want the best results in the on the easiest path.
Do you cover some of this stuff in your books?
A little bit, yes. A little bit. But when you write, when you're writing books, you got to be a little bit careful, because it's great for some people, but for others, it wouldn't be a page turner kind of like getting into kind of like supplementation and it'd be like, oh really, next page, yeah. Where's the pictures of him with dandruff? It's like that, and it is a little bit like that, that, and it can be like that. But I've tried to balance it out with, and this is the thing, like working for super high profile people, or is that I use them to inspire people and normalize things, because they think that everyone if you're Captain America, or you're Chris Pratt in Guardians of the Galaxy, or Tom Hiddleston in Loki, or Benedict as Doctor Strange, they have to put in the blood, sweat and tears and do everything that I'm talking about now. They do the ice bath, they do the kind of grounding, they do the kind of the flexibility, they do the dynamic stuff. They have to eat kind of like correctly on top of work as well. So, and that's me trying to make it as efficient and as easy as them as possible. But they have to graft in the gym. They've got to, sometimes they've got to sweat, and they've got to, get to where they need to kind of like get to. They're not the superheroes that have been, and that's the interesting thing, is that they're drawn. All these superheroes are drawn, and I go into a director's office like, yeah, so we need him to look like that, and you just go, but that's a drawing. They're like, yeah. Like we want the six pack with those obliques, 24-inch kind of like legs, 24-inch biceps. Oh, I really like the back on this one. We'll have him as well. And you just go. So I have to manage expectation on that.
Yeah, I mean that's just from the imagination of an illustrator who may have never exercised.
Of course, and I've been, and it's great. It's nice to sit in the director's room and kind of like, and then you've got I have a default of kind of like, yep, listen, that's absolutely fine. I can do that. I'll give you 100% of his genetic capability, and that's it. That's where I have to go to.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Todd.
Oh, great to hear you, mate. I'm sure I speak for the other sort of actors, filmmakers and PTs in the room. It's really inspiring to hear someone talk so eloquently and informative about matters where they properly know what they're talking about, especially in this sort of day and age where everyone's got a platform through social media.
Yeah.
There's so much, for want of a ruder word, waffle out there by people that probably shouldn't be putting their voice in things. So it's really nice to hear someone talking from the top table so informatively about such an interesting subject matter. Thanks very much for coming down, and really enjoyed your talk.
Thank you. Thanks.
Nice one. Any more questions?
I noticed that you've had the chance, you're working with people at the absolute top of their game in the film industry. I'm thinking more in terms of sports, and I'm thinking Premier League footballers who have a minimal amount of time where they actually work, and they're like falling on that, and they have this huge gap across the week of hours where nobody's looking after them.
Yeah.
The old days when a player came into the first division, he'd be taken under the wing of some lady who lived out on the edge of London and would have 7 or 8 of the kids and look after them and bring them up. These days, you're talking about kids who could be earning, I don't know, tens of £1,000s, more than that a week, who it seems to me, if they could, with that kind of money, something like the job you do, adapted to a sports environment, could keep them away from some of the gambling issues, the sex issues, the not being able to, the money issues, and it would be such a fantastic thing. You're working with actors who are ready for you to give them stuff, but with younger kids, I think something like you do would be, if you could have teams of people like that working with young kids.
Yeah, and the younger actor, and if I'm completely honest, I get a lot of the most job satisfaction with, you're gonna have both. You're gonna have the top actors who have got like a little bit of me and infrastructure and my team, but then there'll be a case where going, oh, we've got a stormtrooper that takes his top off. Si, would you mind? He's only in it for 6 seconds. I'm like, yeah, but that's 6 seconds. Is like that's like 4 or 5 months. Yeah, just give him whatever he kind of wants. And they're normally like these young, kind of like starry-eyed, like, and like what you're saying, this young fraternity of actors, and you kind of like go, oh, right, so this is so and so, and she's going to cook your food for you, and you take it home, and like this is your supplement regime, and then this person's going to give you, going to do a treatment once a week, so you're not in pain after I've like trained you for these 4 days. And I get because there's no expectation there. With the bigger ones, they're not expectation, and they're always grateful. Honestly, not everyone, but they're always kind of like they're grateful. But the younger fraternity of actors that kind of coming through, and that I work with, I get so much out of it, and especially at the end of the job, and you see them, and it's normally like the wrap party or at the premiere, and they're the first ones just to wrap their arms around you and kind of go. And I remember all those ones, and I see them like going up the ladder, and you kind of like, oh yeah, he's going to do well. He'll be like, but it's nice to be able, and I wish that I could offer what the top people got, and I had the time to kind of put it kind of into them as well. It's a real tough one, but it is coming through where now, especially in film, that there is now a wellness package, and there's now a wellness room, and there is like a mindful room now. So there is, whether it's in a marquee or wherever it is very much like, if you need to get out of a situation and you need some time for yourself, just kind of like the wellness room is there, and it's all about setting up, whether it's kind of like 6 or 7 like yoga mats and kind of just good nice lighting, and there is that now where people are very aware of the mental health aspects and the pressures of film, that you can go and you can have a little bit of a time out. And so it is all the wellness stuff is kind of like coming through, especially and all the nutrition as well. It's not like it used to be. It's not it's not full English and then blah blah blah. It's all very much now shots of this and a bit of wheatgrass and kind of like, and all the really like nice stuff, and it's available to kind of like to everybody, because it's so important that everyone's got performance. From the guy that's filling the generator with full of diesel to kind of like to Daniel that's on the stage, every single person is as important as everyone's got the same amount of importance.
Question behind you there.
Simon, thanks very much for a good talk. You just hit on a couple of things there about the industry starting to bring it through to lower levels. My past background has been in marketing communications and training teams to work effectively. And what we would typically do is do a train-the-trainer package.
Yeah.
So we would brief all the European heads that would train, and then they would train their teams in a lower level, but doing exactly what we wanted to do. Is there anything like that you're ever thinking about doing, or is the industry looking to do that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. And I mean, I love the fact, whether it's kind of, because I think it guides itself as team building, right? You do like kind of like team building, so you probably go off and an assault course or kayaking or kind of like something like that. But yeah, there is a case of, but it's about, the thing is with things like that, that's a one-time event and it's done. It's about like it's about education, like we just talked about before. This is how, and the simplistic things. This is how you kind of like, you treat your mental health, and you can reset yourself a little bit by the cold shower thing or the grounding thing or a bit of meditation and all those little things. So if you educate somebody to look after themselves, that's obviously that's got legs and it's got longevity. But the team building thing is just one day only.
But your skill set is about looking at that one individual and where you're trying to get them to.
Yeah.
Okay? That's your time.
Yeah.
You're not utilising that skill to actually have others doing exactly what you do in the industry, to building the depth. You mentioned about having these breakout centres.
Yeah.
What are you doing, or is there anybody taking on board what your skill set is and replicating it through so that those people at the bottom end that might only be taking their shirt off in 10 seconds are getting everything.
Yeah. I mean, and like when I work on a movie, I sometimes have 2 trainers with me.
Right.
So who will kind of like, I'll be at this level and I'll be managing everybody to, whether it's from the usual things, a bit of Pilates, a bit of yoga, a bit of kind of like meditation, strength and conditioning, or mass building. So it does kind of like filter down, and then all those people, as it gathers momentum, you're educating them anyway, because you're on set all day and they're asking you questions. It's like, well, try and eat like this and think about this. So we're educating absolutely everybody, like when we're, especially like on a movie, and the people that work for me are emulating me.
Right.
So that's filtered. Yeah, that's filtered. I have and they're using like my system, and they're using I won't say my system, but they're using my protocols and guidance to kind of like, this is how you would maybe get the best out of this person, or the best out of that person. This person's a little bit more business, but so but it is like, it's completely kind of like
military way. Actually, this is the conditioning, the way we work.
Yeah, and so I've got a good team of people who they're on board with me and alleviate everything, kind of like everything from me, because I'll just say, I just need a bit of time out. Can you just take over? And like my guy Rich will kind of like take over and do everything for me, and I'll go off and then come back and reset, and then we swap over, and so I have to look after myself as well as, like I said, look after everyone else.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Time for 1 or 2 more, if there are any. Tina?
Setting expectations is a real one.
Yeah.
I work as a personal trainer myself, and like setting expectation of what you can actually achieve if you train 1 hour a week, 3 hours a week. You have like the package of taking care of someone for a long time, and you have the overall kind of balloon around them kind of thing. As you say, I take
infrastructure.
Infrastructure around them. So it's just like setting an expectation of, like I want to, I don't know, using your example, like I want to look like you, and you go like, well,
that's it, and and that's like managing expectations through the default that I said before of kind of like, I'll give you 100% of your genetic capability.
Yeah.
And that's it's explaining kind of like things like that, and this is what you would do. This is what will happen. And getting people started, like you've got to start off like a little bit, but sometimes within our business, the training fraternity, it got to a stage where people are just coming up with absolutely crazy ideas to set themselves apart from everyone else. Like, you must do this to look like that, and it's got to be this. And you just go, that exercise doesn't even exist. What is that?
No.
And that's what happens. But people are looking for the edge of like, I have a system, I know it works. But I mean, when I wrote this book, it's quite simplistic. There's not a lot of really complicated exercises. There's not a lot of complicated equipment, and it's very accessible. And I think, like you said, managing expectation is a big thing. And drip feed a little bit of exercise, let them progress. And the thing is, what I always find, the psychology behind it is that us as trainers, we're terrible at pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. Okay, 5 more. Okay, now this session you're going to do this, but where's the end to that? So you've got to kind of have a cut-off line of kind of going, well, after 4 weeks, we're going to go back to the very first workout you did, and that's what I do. So I whiteboard it, I take a picture of it, so I've always got it, and I get them to take a picture of the whiteboard all the time. Like, this is this. So they've always got it kind of with them. And then after 4 weeks, I then go and do the very first day. And they go, oh, is that it? Yeah, but do you remember how you felt on the first day? So there is your progression. So the psychology of giving people that the sense of progression is so important. And our industry is terrible because we're trying to set ourselves we're trying to set ourselves kind of like apart from everyone else. Or he's the most brutal trainer, he's going to crucify you. It's like, yeah, but that's not kind of great, because you walked into the gym and now you can't go to the gym for 7 days because you can't walk. I can't even get back to the gym. It's like, yeah. So I think, man, like you say, like, but again, I hope that answers. Does that answer the question?
Well, it doesn't answer my question. I'm not going to look like her.
You shouldn't want to look like anyone else. You should want to look and to coin the word. Yeah, to coin the word. The cliche.
Well, I mean, your answer of genetics is I am never going to look like her.
Yeah.
Because she's white and I'm brown.
Well, I do think that my question is more like, I think the industry that you have worked in is projecting to normal people, and
Yes.
they think so that's more kind of the expectation of
Yes.
after. Like, normal Tom, Dick and Harry will not look like Daniel Craig because they haven't got you. Do you know what I mean? And it's like having that kind of expectation of this is your life and this is how, like, when you get offset and
Yes.
you meet someone else, like, how does that work?
Well, that's always the first question on anything. I want to look like that person, or I want to look like them, and I need to look like them, and that's the default. I'll give you the best of your genetic capability, but you haven't got Daniel's parents, and and that's basically it. But you can do his regime, and then see what you get from that regime. But that might suit you, that regime. It might be something else that kind of like is going to make you progress more, and that's what's difficult. Not one program fits all, and people react differently kind of like all the time. And that's with food, that's with recovery, that's with training, that's with any situation. In like we'll get back to like the military stuff. People react differently kind of like in the military. I was quite calm, like in an NBC suit, and like nuclear biochemical like defense suit with all the respirator and everything like that. I was quite comfortable with it. Some people, claustrophobic as hell, were running for the hills. So everyone reacts, like I said, like everybody reacts differently to different situations. And us as trainers and wellness people, that's our job, is to be able to kind of figure that out and figure that pattern out very, very quickly and give them the best program to suit them. Not the Daniel Craig program, not the kind of Captain America kind of program, but we're also fixated on looking kind of like someone else. And you have to teach people that just be the best version of yourself. That's the cliche that I was going to say.
One last question.
Just a very quick one. Sport and exercise are sort of associated with, they've been compared to sort of simulated violence and warfare. And now I'm thinking about music and dance that might be simulated sort of sex and it's good, nice things. Have you ever thought about using music or dance in a way to get people in a good mental state, rather than the sort of physically, rather than the more obviously?
I think everything is a dance, isn't it? I think that's the way that that choreography on everything is a dance. Like that's how we kind of like, that's how I listen to the choreographers, like and the stuntmen. It's like all those fight scenes, it's just a dance. It's just, and that's, and so that's how they perceive that it's actually not violence, it's just a dance that we're doing together.
And music, would you see?
Oh, always, yeah. Well, as a motivator, or as in what aspect do you mean music? As to motivate someone to do something, or
in someone's mood, music. Someone's mood.
Yeah, it's all always like always kind of like mood altering. Everyone has their own playlist, and it's like whether that's classical or to full on whatever.
Did we miss anyone? Got a burning one before I ask? Very important final question.
Yeah.
Okay, Andy.
Thanks so much. It's been so interesting. I just wondered if you've worked with anyone, or is everyone that you've worked with ever compromised, or had to compromise, or you've seen that they compromise their kind of own mental health to get to the results, and what you've kind of done in that situation to kind of bring them back to a good place, just because they're obviously under so much pressure to either look a certain way or to perform at a certain level.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when my big thing is that I will not compromise long-term health for short-term benefits. I'm always like, there's no way that you're doing this or being on anything that's crazy, that's going to kind of like, and we've seen those types of films where we've got Christian Bale and then you'll have like Matthew McConaughey, and like they have done it in a way that it hasn't been supervised. They've done it themselves. It's an apple a day and 2 litres of water to lose as much weight and look as drastic as possible. But that is going to kind of like have major mental long-term effects and major physiological long-term effects as well. You know, all them systems kind of like shutting down. And I've done that, and I did Jake Gyllenhaal for Nightcrawler, and then into Southpaw, then into Everest, Prince of Persia, all those kind of different things. But you have to respect that every actor's got a process, and they want their mentality, they want their physicality to match the mentality. Because if he doesn't look like what he is, then he finds it hard to perform. So if he didn't look like the box that he's meant to be, how is he meant to act like, you know? So, and the same with Nightcrawler when he was kind of like getting, and that's, you know, with Jake then, that was hard for both of us, because he was, you know, he had his own spin on things, and I'm like, I don't really want to do that. This is the only way I know how to do it, Si. This is what I want to do. I want to do kind of 2 hours of cardio in the morning. I'm just going to do 500 calories a day. I'm just going to, and you just go, no, but Jake, you know, this has implications long term, and it's like, so you have to kind of just then manipulate, I suppose, the situation into kind of like, no, this is working. You're looking, you know, are you using the scales? Are you using bioimpedance? Are we kind of like, are we measuring your body fat? Are we doing your bloods? You know, all the different things to measure, to find the metric. That's what another big thing that we talk about is metrics. And metrics, physical metrics are easy. There's different ways of measuring like how we're responding to certain situations. The biggest metric that we don't have is mental metric. There is no way that we can measure mental health. There's no kind of like thing we can put on our brain and kind of go, oh, I'm at 5 today, I'm at 6 today. You know, that's internalized, and you can simulate that. I think it would be a great thing to do, of just have a scale of every single day of like, how am I feeling mentally today? 6. You know, and that's a habit that you could get into. 10. Well, I'm on 1 today, and that could be sent to a place where, you know, if you're feeling like a 1, then you should try doing X, Y, and Z. If you're feeling like a 5, do X, Y, and Z. If you're feeling like a 10, happy days. You're having a really good day. But you know, in answer to your question, you know, it is kind of it's tough managing the mental side of things like that, of especially their expectation, because the actors want to look a particular way, and they because they encompass character, the top ones, you know, and it's frightening sometimes, and that's when you've got to be they have to trust you, a professional, and because they'll have done it away themselves when they maybe couldn't have somebody like me to manage it or micromanage it, but me now being able to kind of do it in the healthiest way possible is the most important way to me.
Can I ask, have you ever had to de-train someone to fit an aesthetic, and does that have a mental health effect?
That's the biggest thing, is kind of like, and that's what I've just done. I've done a few big movies, like where they've had to say, for instance, aesthetically they had to be a little bit bigger. Tom Hiddleston, he had to be a little bit bigger for when he was doing Kong. He's a runner. He loves running. It's his escapism. Music on, in answer to your question about music on, it's his escapism from kind of like the kind of like the world that he's encompassing. But I've got to tell him to stop doing the things he loves because he needs to look a certain way for the character. So it's all about just changing the regime a little bit. But overtraining is the biggest thing, and that's what kind of like, what's funny, like people who hear me, like an actor will kind of go, so what we're doing tonight? We're not doing anything tonight. And I'm like, what? Yeah, we're not doing anything tonight. It's rest night. It's kind of like, it's you just do what you want. And you're like, oh, I don't know what to do with that. I'm like, go and do something kind of like what you like doing, and then you get the person kind of like going, I'm not paying you not to train. Like, well, you're kind of telling me you're paying me to tell that person not to train, and that is a professional decision. And it's a really, to tell people not to do something and do what you like, and I'm going home as well. See you later. Yeah, but you're being paid to. I'm like, yeah, but you dare do it.
Yeah.
Because you're frightened of him. I'm not. There's a little bit of that. Yeah. So detraining, I suppose, and again, I mean, overtraining or over enthusiasm, or there's a fine line between it. But to get the desired results, you have to sometimes you've got to bring it back to actually, to get the adaptation you want, because you can't just keep compounding all the time.
Right, you've been very generous with your time. We've covered so much stuff, really appreciative, lots of detail, some dark places too, but there's one question that everyone wants to ask but no one has, but I will, because it's the most important one, is who wins a fight between, let's say, Daniel Craig. This is a real fight, we've seen them all fight, choreographed, but Daniel Craig, Captain America, Chris Evans, Jake Gyllenhaal, Tom Hiddleston. Who wins the fight?
Daniel, every single time.
Yeah, that's who my money would be on. Yeah. Why? Killer instinct. Fight dirty.
Yeah, maybe killer instinct, and probably and everyone else. I don't want to say Tom's an eating boy. There's a little bit of all that. He's it, but you would think that, but Daniel, my God, his scope of what he can do is insane. And that and again, from Bond to Macbeth, whoa, you just go, wow.
Yeah, there's a few good fights in Macbeth, to be fair.
Yeah, it's serious. That's serious work.
Are you continuing to work with him going forward post Bond?
Yeah, I've just come back from Italy literally last week.
Right,
and we've just been doing another. And he'll have amazing. I suppose he's going to have offer after offer after offer. But
Knives Out is a new franchise as well, isn't it? Really?
It's and there's another one of those, and there's lots of other things, but he loves the stage.
And are you still in the employ of the James Bond outfit, and who's going to be the new Bond that you'll be training?
Well,
you knew that was coming.
Of course I did. Yeah, but I mean, whoever it is, and that's a call that I think I don't know whether I've had enough or not. I've done 20 years of it and 22 years of it, and I don't know whether I've still got it depends. It all depends. Can I take it on again? Because it's going to be a person at that age and this kind of, and I'm getting a little bit older. It's going to have to be 36 to kind of 39 thereabouts to do it, and it's going to need a lot of energy. And they maybe not want. Again, they might not want the trainer that trained Daniel. They may just want a clean slate and a complete reboot on all the teams behind it. So, but I'd love to kind of do it again. And and the producer Barbara, she's quite, She, when I see the phone kind of ringing and it's that's, I'm literally ditching everything and kind of okay. I take that call, and I took the call not far from here when I got the Daniel job. I was in Hampton Court, and I was with Marty McCutcheon, who was doing My Fair Lady. Very bizarre. I know, very bizarre.
Contrasting.
Yeah, very contrast. And I'm like, listen, just wait a minute. My phone's ringing. I'm like, hello? And they're like, oh, hey, so. And I'm like, oh my God. So can you go to Washington tomorrow? And I'm like, yeah. Yeah. So there's a guy that I need to see transform into something that you can't talk about, and that just I'm sending the ticket and off you go, and that was the first call. But that call's probably gonna. I hope it comes again.
Yeah.
And it would be great to.
Do you know when? Have you got any expectation of when this might happen?
No. I can't imagine it's going to be that. They normally leave big chunks, right, between. Yeah. I mean, between Pierce and Daniel. I don't know how long that was, maybe 5-6 years. But the natural pattern of how long it takes, you kind of go, well, there's at least kind of 8 months pre-production. There's at least 6 months filming. There's at least kind of 6 months of editing, and then there's probably 3 months of promotion. So even if we sat here now, you kind of going, it's 2-3 years away.
Yeah. Right.
As it feels logically in the filmmaking process of every film. Yeah.
Simon, thanks so much.
Pleasure.
Reminder to buy this book. Everyone remember to buy this. Thank you ever so much for coming tonight, and see you next time. Cheers. I'll be down in the bar afterwards. Nice one. There you go, Simon Waterson. So much more than just a personal trainer. A real inspiration in so many ways, and you can buy his book now. It's called The 10-Week Intelligent Fitness Challenge, and I've put a link to it in the show notes. I thoroughly enjoyed that event and meeting some of the Reset subscribers face to face afterwards. To attend future events, upgrade to the Reset Extra at samdelaney.substack.com/subscribe. Until next time, gang, be lucky and don't let the dickheads get you down.